Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about my mechanics checklist for Stellar Stages of the Supreme, or World of Carnage 3, or Shura 3. Multiple different names just to confuse each and every one of us, but with a mechanics checklist of what to prioritize and what to bring, the dungeon becomes more easy to tackle. And I just want to quickly go over how you read and understand my checklist. So whenever there's a mechanic that's going to appear in the dungeon, I always tell you what floor it happens, and if beside that floor number it has a asterisk or star, it means that is always going to occur. So for instance, when you enter the dungeon, you are going to receive a 2-turn skill delay. That is always going to happen, so it will look like F1 with an asterisk right after it. Then you know it is going to happen, so you can prepare accordingly. And with that in mind, you can in theory make some concessions or take some acceptable risks. Like if this is something that's not going to appear that often, maybe choose to forego it, because you can't bring all the different mechanics, because the mechanics list of what you need to bring is just terribly long nowadays. So it's just, you have to find ways to try and address what is most dangerous. And then lastly, you're going to have another check marks or check marker saying you need to have it. So blind resist is something you definitely want to have. Playing with a full board of 10-turn sticky blinds, a pretty bad idea, so you definitely want to have that. But there are other things like, say, Jammer Surge, which are nice to have but not a priority, and then things that are not relevant if they are not relevant. I'm going to also presume you have things like follow-up attack, auto-follow-up attack to deal with resolve spawns accordingly. You have L and VDP needs, and if there's a large void spawn, which there isn't, I'll make note of it. So, for Stellar Stages of the Supreme, it is a 15-floor dungeon, and you must have all attributes present. Basically, in order to enter the dungeon, you actually have to have all 5 colors present on your team upon entering. If your card transforms and then changes color, for instance, say Sakura from Fate, you have dark water to begin, but when you transform, you now become dark. It still fulfilled the all attribute clause when you entered the dungeon, and that's all you actually have to care about. And the all attribute clause can come from main and sub attributes, so you'll have to find creative ways to fill those gaps. And it's another reason why cards with, say, either missing a sub attribute or having an identical color sub attribute can be potentially a little bit problematic, because, well, they don't provide that color coverage, which in turn lets you enter the dungeon. In addition to that, you have to be aware of the fact that all floors will execute you on the 15th turn, except for 14, 15, Raphael, and I guess the faces as well on floor 13. So just be mindful that the timers are a little different on a couple of floors. You also need to bring a shield for Hexazion's attack wall below 50% hit. This is always going to occur regardless of which Hexizion you encounter. In solo mode, I don't really think it's really truly possible to survive without an external active skill shield. In co-op, you can get by with Daytona or Blackbird, who have bigger shield multipliers. By comparison, you could potentially ignore it, or Mikage maybe as well. Those sort of ideas. But point of the matter is, bring a shield, and at the same time, this shield is possibly going to be meaningful on Gremory's floor, because she does fix your health at a different amount, which is terrible for things like Seawolf teams, who are primarily health-based and less about the damage reduction. You also want to bring skill delay resist on key cards, because on floor 1 and floor 6 there is a 2-turn skill delay. Floor 1 could be problematic because if your delays or hastes are on cards who don't have any skill bind resist, they will be delayed and you will therefore have a problematic time. You also want to have Unmatchable clear. You have a 4 turns of Heart Unmatchable on floor 3, which will always occur, and then there will be 6 turns of Wood on floor 6, which will also always occur. So, if you don't have good ways to heal, or you're not going to be able to have your Awoken bind up clear, because on floor 4, there's actually a 5-turn Awoken bind clear. So, you can potentially bridge floor 3s and floor 4's mechanics together in one active skill if you can kill floor 3 safely and not die, and then be able to clear all the problems on floor 4. There's also more Unmatchables, because you could have potentially of green lights or hearts if left alive on floor 7, which technically always spawns but may not always do that mechanic. There is an 8-turn Heart Unmatchable on floor 12, which is terrible to say the least. 10 turns of red or blue on floor 14, or the Yin Yang Dragons, which will always occur. And then you might have 15 turns of dark on floor 15. Again, the colors are important because what becomes unmatchable may or may not be necessarily important for your team, and how much you have to prioritize those. Because, for instance, say Blackbird teams, they take away red and blue orbs into hearts and darks, so you don't have to worry about red or blue being unmatchable. But Nautilus teams who need to have wood orbs will die on floor 6 if they don't clear the unmatchable. For Awoken bind clears, I already mentioned floor 4, you need to have one, which will always occur, and like not clearing that's going to be a nightmare, I think. And then on floor 10, there's also a 10-turn Awoken bind, which if you don't clear it, you will die. But it doesn't always appear, but you will die if he does appear and you're not ready. You will love to have an RCV buff. I think it's quite challenging to get by without an RCV buffer unless you're running, say, someone like Gung-Ho Belial on like a 1x health team, like say Blackbird, for instance, or Daytona if you really wanted, because you can heal through with the healing solution of Gung-Ho Belial, but other teams will probably want to have an RCV buffer. So there will be a 10-turn debuff on floor 2, which always occurs. That obviously will be terribly problematic because remember, floor 3, hearts are unmatchable. So if you're not healing up on floor 2, going into floor 3, not being able to match hearts, it's a good way to kill yourself, unfortunately. So be mindful of these mechanics, how they stack up. And to a certain extent, if you let mechanics stack up, life becomes much harder overall. There's a 3 turns of 100% RCV void, or basically canceling out your healing. So on floor 8, a 50% chance for Parvati to appear. You will have 3 turns of no healing whatsoever. That's truly dangerous. Even Gung-Ho Belial can't heal through 100% healing debuff. So either delay Parvati or have a RCV buffer to solve that floor. On floor 12, it could be a 10-turn RCV debuff if that spawn appears, and floor 13, 7 turns if that spawn does appear. So RCV debuffing is pretty common and quite lethal in this dungeon. There are many attack buffs, but at the same time, the vast majority of leaders nowadays, when I think about it, all have an attack buff built into their active skills, so it's kind of just like this always occurred anyways. Don't have to think about it, but just be mindful of the fact that there is a 10-turn debuff on floor 5, which always occurs, and then on floor 12, floor 13, these will happen, and then floor 14 will always give you a big debuff if they are knocked below half health, which is most likely going to be the case. So point of the matter is, bring an attack buff or you're never going to harm anything. There is a 2-turn, you need to have 2 turns of damage absorption void, because on floor 6, this spawn will always appear, and it has super resolve, which means you need 2 turns of damage absorption to actually kill it. If you don't bring damage absorption, you're never passing this dungeon, so it's something you just need to actually have. And then for things that are great to have but lower priority, a movement time buff. You might think I'm a little crazy, but there are only 2 truly notable spawns that give movement time debuffs. There are the occasional like 1-turn debuff here and there, but that just occurs anyways. I don't think suffering through 1 turn is the end of the world. But on floor 2, there's a 5-turn debuff, which will always happen. So it's an RCV debuff and a movement time debuff that always occurs on floor 2. So if you have an active skill that overrides both of those, it's great, you double dip. And then on floor 11, there's a 10-turn movement time debuff if you get Gremory. She may not appear, she may appear. Gremory is oftentimes a kind of a losing spawn for a lot of teams anyways, so maybe you were just already going to die to Gremory anyways, because she fixes your health, and if you didn't have your shields ready, you died to the preemptives on the next floor, that sort of idea. So Gremory is pretty problematic, but just be aware of that. These are the only 2 notable floors that give movement time debuffs. Color absorption. So there are so many things you already need to bring and address. So this is why sometimes like I say it's great to have but lower priority, because you may just get away without having to worry about this. Like color absorb, there's 10 turns of random 1 that always occurs on floor 3, which is most likely going to be a death sentence to the vast majority of teams, because if you kill the other golems, the Dryad will execute you and you're just going to have a terrible time overall. So you can take that 20% gambling chance, or you have color absorb somehow conveniently located in your team, and then you're okay. The other instance of color absorb is on floor 13, and it's 10 turns of random blue, green, light, dark. So if you're red team, you don't have to care about this, so even lower need to prioritize that. But floor 13 can also be delayed, and delaying floor 13 solves this color absorption problem. So I say color absorption is nice if you can have it, but if you brought a delay, which you're most likely going to bring anyways for floor 1, you can use that delay on Parvati and possibly this delay on floor 13 if it is absorbing your problematic colors. So just keep these little aspects in mind when you're trying to team build, because I know that there are so many mechanics you have to try and address, and being able to address all of them might be impossible potentially. There are also sticky blind Skyfalls, and it's just worth mentioning that on floor 3 it always occurs, and maybe on 9 and 12. If you have a Cross Awakening on your team, just make sure you take advantage of it, or if it's convenient to have a Cross Awakening card in your team, like say Cecilia, sure, happy times all around. There's a preemptive full board of only red orbs on floor 12 if you encounter Senri. That will kill a lot of teams if it doesn't make your activatable colors. Like Blackbird will just die because you don't get 2 dark combos out of that. Royal Oak will survive because you do convert red to blue. I think Seawolf might be able to just naturally tank it even potentially. But point of the matter is, have some sort of way to possibly solve Senri. But again, it doesn't always appear, and if you are having a tough time fitting in every possible mechanic like you need to bring, it's a lower chance of her appearing. So you may have to take these like kind of acceptable but also risks at the same time. And then finally, if you are a wood team, you would want to have 6 million auto-fall attack or over 812,000 effective health, because if you do encounter Grandis, you will die otherwise, and that's obviously problematic. So you just need to have large amounts of auto-fall attack, but you need to auto-fall attack Grandis down. It's just a problem for wood teams that no other team actually has, because you can double damage cap, you don't have the attribute disadvantage, you're perfectly fine. And then for the other things you want to bring, poison resist, jammer resist, because various spawns may or may not appear, I think it's a lower need to actually bring these resists. If you have them and you can fit them on the team, great, but don't go out of your way to put them on your team if it means sacrificing something from the need to bring column. Blind resist is something you should most certainly have, because 10 turns of a full board of sticky blinds is a nightmare, and you're probably going to die after that. Cloud and tape resist are great to have, but it's not that detrimental if they do appear on your board. I think it's okay. It's not the end of the world. There is a skill bind on floor 1, which always appears. Make sure, you have the appropriate amount of skill bind resist, or you're willing to take that risk, so to speak. And then there is a leader swap on floor 7, which always occurs for 3 turns. But this spawn and the following spawn can be delayed. So having leader swap resist is obviously great if you have it. But at the same time, if you have a nice convenient delay, you can delay that spawn and the following floor, and then you're on your merry little way. And then there is no really significant 7x6 punishment that I could find. It's just like you get smacked a bit by Grandis, but the smacking is not particularly hard, so I don't think it's actually a problematic aspect. And it doesn't even appear that often in Grandis. Like, I think it's 50% chance, so it doesn't always appear. So point of the matter is, don't worry about it. If you're 7x6, you should be able to tank these hits anyways. So with that being said, hopefully this video / article gives you a bit of insight of what you should be trying to address or bring when you're starting to tackle Stellar Stage of the Supreme. It is a challenging dungeon to play, but highly lucrative and rewarding, because when you think about it, you are able to acquire 1 billion coins on average and 3+ super snow globes and a chance at like a latent that's highly valuable. So with that being said, hopefully you all have a truly fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures. I will add this into my master checklist article as well, so it's in all one handy reference place. And happy puzzling.